Okay, President Scott, are you ready to start?
Yep.
Okay, so we will start out with the Finance Committee on introductory 397, authorization 2021 administrative tax cancellations and refunds. And we also had an amendment, it was actually an attachment that was sent over for the legislation to be amended for the correct date from 2020 to 2021. Are there any questions?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. Councilmember Gruber has joined us. Hello.
Hi, what number are we on? Sorry for being late.
397, the first one in Finance Committee.
Wow, I didn't miss a beat. Thank you very
Not
much.
one.
All right.
Okay, we will go on to introductory number 398 and 399. That's grant and bond authorization, Rochester Public Library renovations and upgrades. Any questions?
Conda, I'm just curious how this compares to maybe the last 3 years of what we've received from library development and construction funds.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. We'll move on to introductory number 400, intermunicipal agreement with Monroe County. And it's relating to the CARES Act funding. Any questions?
I just maybe for Malik. With this funding, Malik, where does this, and if I'm missing it, just please bear with me. Where does this go in our coffers by receiving this?
If you look on the in the legislation, it has where each of the dollars that we're getting, what it's going to be used for. I think it might be on the last couple of pages. And what happens is we get reimbursed for the uses of the funds that we're going to use related to that. But on the last couple of pages, I think it talks about what each of the dollars are going to be used for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So as a reimbursement, it would go back to the originating pot. Is that the idea?
Right.
So if it's reimbursing for DES water, it'll go back to DES water. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Malik, this might be appropriate based on the conversation we also had in the 333 last night. But it talks about the date of December 30th, 2020. And I just want to ask for the record if there's any flexibility on that expired date for CARES Act dollars generally.
Yeah. Ditto to that question for me as well.
So any flexibility on the expiration date for the CARES Act?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? All right, moving on to.
Sorry, I popped on late. Where are we?
We are on introductory 400, finance. Do you have any questions on 397, 398, 99?
No,
Okay,
thanks.
you're welcome. Okay, we will move on to introductory number 428, and that's the Commissioner of Deeds. Any
I have
questions?
a question.
You have a question? Okay.
Yeah, so there is a maximum set, but I'm just wondering why there is a maximum, just for information.
Okay.
Councilmember Lupian, if you like the history of that, I can get it for you, but we typically don't exceed 175 in any given year.
Mhm.
So we can provide that information if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what the maximum, why we have it, but yeah. Yeah, I saw that it, exceed 175, so 250 is obviously enough, but I was just wondering the origin of the need for a maximum.
Okay, we'll get back to you on that.
Any additional questions? Okay, we'll move on to 430, introductory number 431, agreement medical services for uniformed employees. And there's also, the RFP was attached. It was sent out today. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to introductory number 432, capital improvement program, city school district. And that's an actual tweener. That's number 432 with the red dot.
I don't think I have that.
Yeah, I knew that was gonna be a possible late submission. I know Chris had mentioned that. Pull it up.
Okay. You don't have it, President Scott?
Can you put it on the screen?
Okay, let's see here. Go and get it.
I can pull it up.
Oh, thanks, Katie.
Mhm. Can you see it?
Just scroll up, please. Okay. So, with this borrowing, how does that fit in terms of their debt situation, or I should say their fiscal gap situation? In other words, they're gonna be able to pay it.
Okay, so your question was, how does it fit in the terms of the fiscal gap situation, and will RCSD
Right.
be able to pay? Okay,
Right.
okay.
And is the borrowing associated with capital improvement projects consistent with the agreement that we have about what kinds of capital projects would be supported in terms of health and safety and that kind of thing?
I have a question as well, when you're ready.
Okay. Okay, President Scott, so the last question is the borrowing associated with the CIP within the agreement with the kinds of projects that will be supported?
That we have an agreement with them about the kinds of capital projects that would be supported. Does the uses of this borrowing, is that consistent with that agreement?
Okay, is the usage of this borrowing
Will it be consistent with that agreement? That is the question.
consistent with the agreement? Okay. All right, and Councilmember Pio?
Yes, in terms of financial latitude, should we look at possibly borrowing more now as opposed to next year when things might be worse for us?
Jose, do you mean on behalf of the district or on behalf of us?
I think I'm kind of on both. I'm just personally terrified of what we're going to look at next year in terms of borrowing capabilities. and what we have to pay on that debt. So if we can borrow at a lower rate, should we?
Okay. So in terms of financial latitude, should we look at borrowing more now? And that's on behalf of the district as well as the city?
Yes, thank you, Kanda. And congratulations again.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Are there any additional questions? Okay. All right, we will move on to NBD. And we'll start off with introductory number 401, sale of real estate.
I have a question.
Okay, ready.
And I apologize if this has been asked before, but what is the criteria for selling land for $1?
What's the criteria for selling land for $1?
I have a question too, Conda.
I think it has been asked.
That's in
I
the
think it is-
that's in the transmittal.
I think it has to be unbuildable vacant.
And it has to be adjoining the other parcel.
Unbuildable, vacant, and being sold to adjoining landowner. Got it. Thank you.
Is it possible? Is it possible to get a list of by zip code? I don't need to know actual streets, but by zip codes, a breakdown of how many properties for $1 have been sold by zip codes in the last, I'll say, 5 years.
Okay, breakdown of how many properties been sold in the last 5 years, is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and
please.
that's by zip code. Okay,
Yep. Thank you.
you're welcome. And Councilmember Lupian, do you still want your question to stay there or are you okay?
Okay.
Okay. Any,
Actually, go ahead and put it in because then it'll be available for anybody else who has that question.
okay. No problem. Any further questions on 401? Okay. Introductory 402, lease agreement 1015 Thomas Avenue and 25 Stutson Street. Any questions on that one? Okay. Introductory number 403, lease revision 25 through 37 Canal Street.
What's there? Does anybody know? What's in that location?
Let's see.
Okay, we can ask what,
I think the answer is that this is between the old VOA and the old Cunningham factory.
that factory, but so there's nothing there, it's just,
I think it's an empty lot, but that's actually what I want to ask is why is this being done? What is prompting this?
Okay. Okay, President Scott, you want to know what is there in that location? And Councilmember Gruber, you want to know what is prompting this?
Yes.
Okay.
or maybe maybe a more direct way of asking it, what is the lease utilized for? Somebody's leasing it, so for what?
Okay, what is the lease utilized for? Okay, and what is prompting the lease revision? Okay. Okay, any additional questions? Okay, moving on to introductory number 404, 62-64 Sile Street project.
I have some questions.
Okay, 1 second here. Okay,
So actually, I just had a meeting with these developers, so I have the answers to the first three, but I just want them to be public, which is how many bedrooms will these units have?
how many bedrooms?
what is the anticipated sale price?
And that second one's the anticipated sale price?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then will there be any public amenities?
Mm,
And then a question I don't have the answer for. I know that the neighborhood group there really wanted to have that lot be a public space. And I think they were told that there was some kind of agreement for the grant money used to clean that up, that it would have a tax impact. And I just wondered if they could share that with me.
So you would like to know the tax impact?
No, if there was an agreement,
Oh, okay,
because the city got funds to clean it up,
okay.
and what the agreement was in terms of there needing to be a tax impact.
I don't understand your question.
So the neighborhood had wanted that space to be a community space. You know, they had some gardens there and an artwork, but the city said that there was some reason that that couldn't happen. And I just wanted to know more details about that. I think they had said something around it being a stipulation for the grant funds that they had used to clean it up. Does that make sense?
Let's see, state that again for me. Councilmember Whitfield. I'm sorry, I got the last part, I'm sorry.
Sure. I guess maybe the more clear question is, what's the reason that lot couldn't be used as community space?
Okay, I understand
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's community space.
Yeah.
All right. So how many bedrooms will these units have? What is the anticipated sales price and any public amenities, as well as what's the reason the lot couldn't be used as a community space? Okay,
I had a question, Conda.
all righty. All set?
I'm trying to think of how to frame it. This this project uses choice, the choice tax abatement, and Commissioner Kirkmeyer had explained that there were some legal specifics being worked out with Comida, who actually administers it. And I just wanted an update on how the choice program is going to work, if the choice program is going to have any snags for this program, for this project, pardon me.
Okay, is the choice program going to have? Okay, any snags for this program? Okay,
For this project, sorry.
for this project, okay.
Yeah, that was one thing that they mentioned to me, that they were having trouble. They went to the county to talk to initiate the process to get the choice, and then we're sent to the city, and then we're sent back to the county. So it might be helpful to know how that process, who has who takes the lead on that, maybe?
Who administers
City or
it?
county? Yeah. Well, I think the county administers it, but maybe there has to be something done at the city level. I don't know how to phrase that better. Maybe who is the initial, how does the process get started, maybe? I'll stick with that, Conda,
How does the process get started with this program?
for community, yeah, and the choice program, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any additional questions?
Yes, I would like to know how the developer was able to get the funding with only 12% down.
To get the funding, only 12% down. Okay, so how was the developer able to get funding with only 12% down? Okay. Yes, Councilmember Pio. Okay, any additional questions? All right, moving on to introductory number 405, zoning text and map amendment, removal of 6 expired U-R urban renewal districts. Now, BJ, can you assist me with this? During the MBD meeting with with the MBD team, Councilmember Patterson said he wanted to hold this. Is that correct?
That's correct. He indicated that he thinks that the council should have more time to be able to digest it and understand it, so he does not want it to go this month.
Okay.
So I know that Dana and Gary both reached out to Councilman Patterson because they're trying to work on the zoning code and they need to clean this up first in 2 months. If they wait 2 months, this is just going to delay them with the zoning code amendment. And this is basically a cleanup of expired urban renewal districts. So they have a 40-year, as most people know, date, and they've been expired for a while. So they're just really trying to clean it up. So I think they were concerned because it's a fairly cut and dry thing that, they wanted to know if anybody else on council had questions or needed a couple of months to look this over.
Well,
There was a work session on this.
Right.
Yes.
There was a work session.
A work session.
I made
Yeah.
sure that was part of the work session, just so this wouldn't happen and where it's there.
So we'll have to find out if Mike is aware that there was a work session on that, and maybe we can talk through it.
Okay, all right.
Mike asked for that work session, so I'm pretty sure he was aware of it. I think that Mike may just want this to be held and to have some time to think about it, but I think we can certainly work with him and see if he's ready to go.
I made a note to ask him.
I have 2 questions.
Okay, you have to. Okay,
Um,
also,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I know that we kind of had discussions around this during the work session, but I don't know if we got an answer. Was the goal of these?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now I can.
I said, I know this was discussed in the work session, but I don't remember if we got an answer. Was the goal of these urban renewal districts achieved? And is there a benefit to keeping them? Is there any benefit at all to keeping them? Thank you.
Okay, what's the goal of the urban renewal districts achieved, and is there a benefit to keeping them? Okay. Okay, any additional questions on 405?
Sorry, I know that at
I
least
just have one question. I'm sorry, BJ. I just have one question. Being that this is related to the zoning, the zoning amendments, what's the timeline for the zoning amendments, which this is related to?
When are they're working on the zoning now, so I don't know when they're going to be done with it. They have to do all the public meetings and things, but this will be a little hiccup if this is held for 2 months.
Yeah, so they can just maybe put that in writing.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and if you could sort of pinpoint what the planned completion, if you will, of the zoning amendments.
Zoning amendments.
That would put it in I think, a more compelling kind of context, I believe.
Okay, what's the timeline of zoning amendments, which this is related to, and what is the planned completion of the zoning amendments? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Any further questions?
So what I was going to say in reference to Councilmember Lupien's question about is there any benefit to keeping them? They had mentioned in that work session that the urban renewal districts are expired, so you can't keep them. In order to, if you wanted to, you would have to fill out all of the paperwork, reapply, and do all of the studies to establish the same urban renewal district. But you can't keep them. You can't extend the life of them. You can't do anything like that. When they expire, they expire. If you want to have them continue, you would have to resubmit and reapply for everything.
But the funding pots applicable to urban renewal districts no longer exist in that format. So then the question would be, why would you want to?
I have one question. It would be helpful if we got a understanding of the remaining urban renewal districts and the timeline for expiration.
Okay, so understanding of the remaining urban renewal districts and timeline for the expirations. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Any additional questions on introductory 405?
Yes, I had a quick question. I believe there was some public meetings held. Is there a way to get the dates of those public meetings and how many were in attendance concerning this?
Okay.
For this, are you talking about the zoning code or for, there will be a public hearing for this.
Yeah,
What public meetings are you talking about?
Like with community associations, have they spoken with them concerning the zoning
Oh,
updates, or
no.
are they going to?
Okay. That's kind of outside of the scope of this one, but I'll make sure that gets answered. And if you just want to do it as an addition, and I'll have it, make sure it's answered for everybody.
Okay. So is there a way to get the meeting minutes from the public hearings or public community? Let's see, public.
I think what he's looking for is a list of what community meetings are going to be held for the new zoning code. Is that what you're saying, Councilman?
Well, specifically for this
Oh.
area, because I know the neighborhood groups were pretty adamant about being involved in it. And I know we had it where they would be involved. So I just want to make sure that their voices are heard. So
For the
if there's
urban
any
renewal
meetings,
districts?
I'm sorry?
For the urban renewal district to get this item in particular, or you talking about this item as it relates to zoning, or?
This
What?
item in relation to zoning, if there was any public meetings held to get any kind of, do we need to get any feedback regarding zoning, or do we speak to neighbors or neighborhood associations about their feelings about the new zoning? Or is
Okay,
it
but
even
this
just,
one is on urban renewal districts,
okay?
to get rid of urban renewal districts that are no longer useful. So you want to know if there are any hearings about that?
Well, I wouldn't really say hearings, just I don't know the difference between what a urban renewal district and a new zoning would be. Like, I don't have that information. I know most neighbors wouldn't. So if there's a new zone going into effect in my neighborhood, I would at least want to know about it so that I'm aware of what that means to me.
So there,
Right, so there will be the meetings on zoning. They're gonna
Okay.
be that,
Okay, so a generalized meeting is what you're saying.
about
Because of zoning.
zoning in particular.
Okay,
And this
gotcha.
about just abolishing the urban renewal districts is separate? I mean,
So this piece of legislation focuses on already expired urban renewal districts. So these don't exist anymore. The idea is that in the code, they still exist in the zoning code. So it's just like this extra
Cleaning it up.
stuff that doesn't do anything. So it's just
Okay.
simply removing them from the code. You wouldn't
Gotcha.
have public meeting information on it because the zones were established in the 60s and 70s. So that public meeting information, if it was available, wouldn't really be relevant. And it doesn't really impact neighborhoods because the designation has already ended. This is strictly a technical amendment to clean up the zoning code.
Okay, let's strike the question. That's good. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm still new. I'm going to claim that all year.
take advantage of it, Jose.
Okay, any additional questions on 405? Okay, moving on to introductory number 406, amending the 2019-20 Annual Action Plan, Consolidated Community Development Plan. Councilmember Patterson had a question he wanted to clarify the difference between 406 and 407 and why both are needed. Okay. If there are no additional questions,
I have one, Conda.
okay.
I should really write these down before I start talking. The question is, do all CARES Act dollars get added into the consolidated plan?
Okay, do all CARES Act dollars get added into the consolidated plan? Okay.
And maybe a second part of that question is that true for any dollars that flow through HUD? Do they have to somehow find their way into the consolidated plan?
They have to find their way.
And Loretta, maybe you can answer. I mean, I don't necessarily need it to go on the record. I'm mostly just trying to understand. You know, there was a lot of work done on the consolidated plan. It was presented to us. It was great. They put a lot of work into it, and now it's concerning me that we're just adding stuff to it, unless that's just a mechanism of you must add it because it's more ESG dollars. Is that right, BJ?
I'm pretty sure that's right. I think that the consolidated plan is essentially the city's plan for the 4 or 5 streams of HUD funding. And if you get extra money, it's required that you have to amend that plan to be able to show how you will use it and spend it. And I think that to some extent, the difference between 406 and 407 is that 406 is doing that paperwork piece of like updating the plan with HUD so that the paperwork is done. And 407 is sort of the allocation of like putting that money to where it needs to go.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so I still have your questions there, Councilmember Brewer. Do they have to find their way? Well, do all CARES Act dollars get added into the consolidated plan? And is this true for any dollars that flow through HUD? And do they have to find their way into this consolidated plan?
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, any additional questions on introductory number 406? Okay, moving on to introductory number 407, Business Emergency Retention Grant Assistance for Food Establishments Grant and Aging in Place Food Distribution Programs, CDBG-CB3-CARES Act.
How much, what's the balance from these funding sources? And how long do we have to spend it?
How long do we have to spend it?
Right. How much is left?
Mm-hmm.
And how long do we have to spend whatever's left?
I think at the meeting they said that there was 2.3 million left, and then this would be about 1.4 million of it. So we would have about 900,000 left to allocate.
906,477.
Memory.
And we have until when to spend that?
That I don't have for you.
And what are is there a plan to spend it? I have trepidation about the prospect of having any money left in the pot at the end of the period. Because we've done that with our block grant money. I don't like that.
Okay. So also Councilmember Patterson had, he wanted to clarify the difference between 406 and 407 here. What is the balance from these funding sources? How long do we have to spend whatever is left? And is there a plan to spend the balance?
Yep.
All righty.
I have a couple questions around item number 3, authorizing 211.
You said authorizing 211?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges I know from the grassroots and from the ground is particularly in communities with people who are linguistically isolated, so speak a language other than English as their primary language, there was strong or long wait times. And I just wonder what's the process for ensuring a language access plan in these services. And I would also want to know, I know we got the data from the first time in terms of number of meals served and all of that.
Mhm.
But I would also like to know a breakdown of the Spanish speaking or linguistically isolated population versus English speaking populations.
So for the meal recipients or providers?
For the meal recipients, so those who are going through 211, what's the breakdown of how they were diverted? Because we have, anecdotally, I know that there were a lot of folks who got frustrated and just stopped calling that didn't speak English.
Do we know if they track that? I don't know if that would
I
be.
don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. So I'm just asking. Yeah.
Okay, so you would like to have a breakdown of how the non-English speakers were diverted as they have called in for these services?
Well, not diverted. You trying
Or-
to see how they
or
were
passed.
served,
How they were served, okay.
served or not, right?
I would also consider tagging onto that question, council member. If we don't track this information, is it possible to do so? Because I think that you want that information, and unless you ask about that part, and the answer could simply just be we don't track that.
Thank you, PJ, for adding that. I appreciate it.
We also might want to ask if consideration has been given to creating additional language access. With 911, they've got, it's like it's a program or something that they're able to get translations, without having to call. I don't know how they do it, but they do it.
It's called Language Line, and they have the ability, if somebody doesn't speak English, to connect with Language Line, and they're able to, I think, get up to like 30 or 40 different languages. So it's on a contract, and I think they do the charge per minute for the service.
So we might want to ask if they've considered that, or if they're able to do that, because it's important. You can't get the food because you can't tell anybody what it is you want. Doesn't do you any good.
No, one thing is that they're not getting as much funding as they need. They had an expected call volume, and it's more than they had anticipated, I think. And I think for something like that, there might have to be an additional funding attached to it.
But they
Just
didn't
thinking.
request additional funding.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to just give it to them because we think they need it. They
Right.
need to ask for it. If they can't
Yeah.
do it, they need to say they can't do it and say what they need. Because I
Yeah.
tell you, the waits at 211 it's awful.
Yes.
Absolutely awful.
Part of that, and I think I said this in an email, that they get thousands of calls, but because they haven't been able to be processed in the 7 to 10 days that they were promised, they're calling back, which is adding to the call volume of people who are newly trying to get connected. So there's definitely a lot of issues with this, and many people have contacted me just in the last couple of days to just share their frustration, both constituents calling in and people working the system, to just say this is not working as we had hoped it would.
Well, then let's add to our questions. What steps have been taken to address the I don't want to say shortcomings, but I'm saying the operational issues that are occurring that hampered 211 from providing great service, because they don't. They just, maybe they're overwhelmed, but we can't just acknowledge it and keep moving. We need to do something about it.
I think adding to that, the operational deficiencies and getting the money out the door.
Well, one additional question then related to communication to the community, and this might be for 211, it might be for administration, but how do we ensure that the the Latino community understands the process, right? I think there's a 211 text line, there's a phone line, and then there's also, for these meals specifically, you have to sign up in advance and request in advance. And I think some of this information just isn't out there in a way that's been consumed by folks who don't speak English. Got to figure out a way to bridge that gap.
Okay. All right. So with Councilmember Melendez's questions around authorizing 211, what's the process for ensuring a language access plan within these services? What's the breakdown of how the non-English speakers were served? If we don't track this information, how can we do so? And then also, how do we ensure the Latino community understands the process? And with President Scott, has consideration been given to creating additional language access? And have we been able to do this? And what steps have been taken to address the operational issues that hamper 211 from providing great service?
Works for me.
Can I ask one more, Conda? Different bucket.
Okay.
For the BERG grant, BERG, what are the dollar amounts that will be provided to approved businesses?
Okay. So for the
And
BERG
will-
grant, what are the dollar amounts provided to approved businesses? Okay.
Yep, and will businesses be able to access a second round of BERG grants if they were already approved?
Okay. Will businesses be able to access a second round of BERG grants if they were already approved? Okay. All right. This was number 3. Okay. Any additional questions?
Just a follow up on the question we had before. Everything I've read about the CARES Act says it does end on December 30th, not 31st, but the 30th. So if we have $906,000 left, what's the game plan for hopefully getting, spending the rest of that as quickly as we can?
I asked that already, Jose.
Okay.
Yeah, is there a plan to spend the balance? Okay.
There is a, not to get into the weeds on this one, but there is a portion of it that does go towards current student loans, not tuition or books, but student loans. So if we need to get rid of it, we could pay some city employees student loans up to like $5,250.
Okay. Any additional questions on 407? Okay, so we'll move on to introductory number 429, CD. Oh,
Before we move, I don't know, Joseanne, or maybe just put it in the record. Is there some place where someone could look at all of the program activities or resources that we have available that are coming basically as a result of CARES Act? Because a lot of it is stuff some of the stuff we fund just increases the level, but other, like the student loan piece, I mean, where is that? How does somebody know what they can ask for? So can we just put that in our questions? Is there a site that information is readily available?
Yeah, the answer to that is no. So that's a good question.
Okay, is there a site?
Well, I hope there'd be a no, but.
Readily available. So is there a site readily available to look at all resources that comes from the CARES Act, and how does someone know what they can ask?
Right, from a city site, because I mean, I guess you could go to the federal legislation or something, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Is there a city site? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There sort of is, President Scott. There is there's cityofrochester.gov/coronavirus, and on that they provide all of the access for city services, but also links to the Jumpstarting Rock and Reopening Rochester, other community resources, helpful telephone numbers, and then they also have additional services that you can access by clicking some of those links. So I would
You
say
see the
that
scholarship thing there? I mean, not the scholarship, the,
Yeah,
tu-
it's
the
not all encompassing. That's mostly businesses and things like
tuition thing.
I think that they also have.
Yeah, well,
some-
we just asked the question and we can, yeah.
Okay. All righty. So introductory number 429, CDS Clifford and Joseph Apartments Project.
Nice.
Okay. No questions. We'll move on to PPW. Okay, with starting out with introductory number 408, grant acceptance, New York State Pollution Prevention Institute Community Grant Program, Composting Education Pilot Program. Any
We have
questions?
a similar program currently. There's something that looks so familiar about this.
Yeah, it's essentially just it's just additional dollars to support the state grant that we already have.
Okay,
And this money comes from P2I, which is housed at RIT. It's just really tacked on additional dollars.
okay, okay.
Do you want to take that question out, President Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Just was wondering what activities are covered under the grant.
I couldn't hear you that second. Say that again for me.
What activities are covered under the grant?
Okay. Okay. Anything additional? Okay, we'll move on to introductory number 409, US EPA Environmental Workforce Development and Job Training Program Professional Services Agreement, Occupational Health Services. Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I guess what, see if I can phrase this. The city recently instituted a policy about not doing pre-employment testing for THC. So wondering the justification for continuing that with the ReJobs 2.0.
Mary, just feel free to continue to ask it, but it's in the transmittal. That's a stipulation from the EPA. So it's just
Oh,
a
I didn't
federal-
see that part.
Yeah, it's the end of the second paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
So you want to keep?
No, you can.
Okay.
You can take it out. And then I looked at the ReJobs page on the city's website, and I was wondering about some of the requirements. And for GED and driver's license, both of them had question marks next to them, and I was wondering if there was clarification on whether those were indeed requirements. Last question.
It listed a question mark on the website?
Yeah, there's like a list of requirements, and next to
Yeah.
GED and driver's license, there was question marks next to them.
Huh.
And you want the clarification on whether they are requirements.
Yeah. And then my last question is, and maybe this is another stipulation by the program, but it says that they need to already own a vehicle, and it's would be a barrier. So wondering if there's an opportunity to use grants or you know, train someone without a vehicle, and then when they graduate, help them acquire one.
Okay, so is there an opportunity to train someone with the grant funds who does not have a vehicle and then give them an opportunity to get one afterwards? Okay. Without vehicle. Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. We move on to introductory number 410. Grant Agreement 2019 Preventive Maintenance Northwest Group 5, Beach Avenue, Dewey Avenue, and Lake Avenue.
Conda, just a reminder, I was going to have Holly explain the map on the second page, if the bike lanes are just the red lines or the gray lines.
Okay.
As well.
The bike lanes. Gray line and the red lines. Okay. Okay. Any additional questions here?
It's not a question. I'm not understanding. This is just to approve a resolution for work that was already done. So what is it that we're voting on here? That the work was completed to our satisfaction, and now we're going to ask the state for funding back, or?
Yeah, I think it's the right question to ask, Jose, but I think it is just to receive our reimbursement for it.
Okay.
So what are we voting on here? And what was the second part? I'm sorry, Councilmember Pio.
Well, that was about it. Well, you know, but the project is already done. I just want to see if we are just voting on confirming the project was done. We need to get the reimbursement. Is that kind of lost as what we're actually voting on?
Councilmember Gruber, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that they said that in order to get the reimbursement, the state has to have a resolution written a certain way that fits the requirements. So again, this is just sort of the paperwork element of it that fits the forms that the state needs to have to button it up.
I believe that's right.
I have a question just for my own edification. What kinds of activities are covered under preventive maintenance?
Okay. All right. So with introductory 410, Councilmember Gruber, the question was, will you explain the bike lanes with the gray lines and red lines on the map? Holly's going to get that. And Councilmember Pio, what are we voting on here? Confirming the project being done to get the reimbursement. And Councilmember Lupien, what kinds of activities are covered under preventive maintenance? Any additional questions on introductory number 410? Okay, introductory number 411, technical amendment, ordinance number 2009-247, and ordinance number 2019-192 for the Lawn, Street, and Manor Parkway improvement projects. Okay, no questions. We'll move on to introductory number 412, 413, 414, and 415. East Main Street Improvement Project, North Goodman Street to Culver Road. Any questions? No questions, we'll move on. Okay, we have introductory number 416, appropriation, Rochester Pure Waters District Street Improvement Projects. Any questions here? Okay, we'll move on to introductory number 417, Waring Road Improvement Project, Culver Road to Norton Street. Okay. No questions. We'll move on to introductory 418 and 419, Genesee Firehouse upgrades. Okay.
A question, I don't know if I know how to phrase it, but like, how is it decided which fire stations get upgrades, and is there any consideration given to like the, how do I say this? Like what like if a fire station is super old, does it make sense to keep investing in it, or would it be better spent somewhere else? So I don't know exactly how to word that in a question.
Okay, how is it decided to which firehouses get upgrades, and if the,
Is your question to essentially to see whether or not it's more sensible to do a new build versus upgrade a building?
No, I know it's not. That isn't cost effective. Let me think on that, Kanda, and I'll maybe I'll write it.
okay. Any additional questions? Moving on to introductory number 420, geometric changes, Main Street Streetscape Phase 2. Any questions? Moving on to introductory 421, the vacuum oil BOH River Trail. Any questions? Okay, introductory 422, Priority Bicycle Boulevards Implementation Project. Questions?
I
Okay,
have one question.
Okay.
For the northeast quadrant of the city, I wanted to know what went into using some of the, I guess, side streets, if you will, rather than the main thoroughfares for the bike boulevard. So instead of using Clifford Avenue, let's say there's use of Avenue A and some of these other side streets like Wilkins, et cetera.
okay, so in the northeast quadrants, what went into using the side streets instead of the main streets? Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, we'll move on to Public Safety, Recreation, and Human Services. Introductory number 423, Agreement Monroe County DWI Crackdown Weekend Enforcement Grant.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is this money specific? Is this money? Can it only be used for like an enforcement detail, or can it be used in other ways? For example, to use the money to provide like ride sharing services as more of a preventative measure.
Okay, is this money, can it only be used for enforcement details, and what was after that? I'm sorry.
could it, for example, be used to provide free ride sharing services as a preventative measure?
Free ride sharing services. Okay. As preventive maintenance.
Conda, one more thing, sorry, on the last introductory with the bike boulevards.
Okay.
Also, what wayfinding or awareness will be put in place so people know where these boulevards are?
Oh,
$1 million question, Miguel. Or hopefully less than $1 million question, but it's a question that with a price tag.
okay, so what wayfinding awareness will be put in place so people will know where these boulevards are? Okay. All right. And then Councilmember Lupien for 423. Can this money be used for enforcement details, for example, to provide free ride sharing services and preventive maintenance?
Can the money is the money tied to enforcement details, or can it be used for the free ride sharing and prevention?
Can it be tied to enforcement details?
I can send it to you if you want.
And can it be provided? Okay. All right. Any additional questions on 423? Moving on to 424, Agreement Center for Dispute Settlement Complaint Management Services.
What does the $75,000 figure represent? It's not half, it's not a third, it's, what does it compute to? What does it relate to?
Okay. All right, what does the $75,000 figure relate to? Okay.
What is it? Okay, this says it's for 6 months. The total grant, I think, is total contract rather, I think it's like 200 and at least 200,000. So what portion of the total contract is this intended to support?
Okay, so what does the $75,000 figure portion of the total, what portion of the total contract is the $75,000 figure intended to support? Okay. All righty. Any additional questions on 424? 425, Agreement Sundberg ATM automated teller machines for the Rochester Public Market and the International Plaza.
What amount do we currently get per transaction? It's kind of high, $295.
Okay, what amount do we currently get per transaction? Okay.
Nothing worse than ATM fees. I'm looking at you, Malik. I'm watching you.
Okay, any additional questions on 425?
Yeah, okay, Mitch.
Yeah, I have some.
Okay, on 425, okay.
Where does the money get used that we currently, receive? And, is it possible that this money could be earmarked for the benefit of market shoppers or helping businesses out during COVID, for example?
Could it be earmarked for shoppers? Say that
For the
again.
benefit of the market shoppers or the businesses?
Okay.
And what's the cost estimate for the city owning its own machines?
We don't have any costs associated with this.
No, for if the city were to own their own machines?
Could you repeat that, Councilmember Loopy? I'm sorry.
What's the cost estimate for the city owning its own machines?
If I could jump into, Madam President, it looks like $1.50 per transaction would come to the city. I'm wondering if, in the interest of trying to keep the cost down of the actual machine, do we need to recover that under this agreement? I don't know if I'm phrasing that right, but it's thinking about the neighborhood and would the $1.50 make the difference in the plaza, or could that be cost savings that is passed on to the neighborhood, those who use it?
It's kind of similar to what I was trying to get at.
Could you repeat that for me? I'm sorry. I couldn't hear.
Yes, so the $1.50 that the city would recover per transaction, could that be a cost savings for the users of the ATM? So it looks like they recover almost $3 per transaction.
Okay.
So I guess the question is, can they charge $1.45 per transaction and the city not recover? And I know Malik is probably going to look at me too sideways and say, we got to recover every penny we can get. But the question.
Okay, the $1.50 cover per transaction. Could this be a cost savings for the users of the ATM?
Well, unless something has changed, and maybe it has, the public market doesn't fully support itself. So we would want to take that into consideration as well.
Benefit for the public. Okay. Any additional questions on 425? Okay, introductory 426 agreements, New York State Department of Health Comprehensive Adolescence Pregnancy Prevention Grant.
The numbers, the numbers are like, is there any indication as to why the numbers are going in such a negative direction?
Right. Is there any indication as to why the numbers are going in such a negative direction? Okay. Any additional questions?
Just a 3-year history of this grant. I feel like there was a time where we were getting more money when it was federal, and then the Trump administration slashed it, and maybe that's why there's less money. But I'd love to just see general funding for pregnancy prevention grants.
And also, are we looking at for other sources to supplement this grant? I mean, is this something I believe a lot in? I was a educator in this stuff. One of my first jobs was here, and these numbers always are sobering, especially when you look at 14 and younger. They look low, but really it's still like, wow.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Gruber, you would like a 3-year history of this grant, the general funding for pregnancy prevention. And Councilmember Evans, are we looking at other sources to supplement this grant? Okay. Any additional questions for 426? Okay, introductory 427, agreement White Bird Clinic. Okay,
Just if we could see the scope of work.
you just want to see the scope of work?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions for 427? Okay, introductory number 430, amend ordinance number 2020-333.
I don't have that one either. What is that?
Let's see.
It's relating to the appropriation of funds for the sale of a mounted police patrol horse. I
Oh,
believe
yeah,
this
I
is
do have it.
Shamrock.
I do have it. Got to
Yes.
put it in capital instead
Yeah,
of
so they're
operating
putting
budget.
it into, yep.
Yep. That's a horse lives longer than 5 years, and that's for capital items to do that. Okay.
Shamrock getting back-to-back meeting.
Shamrock is living on.
Okay.
Pretty generic question. This doesn't need to be one of those questions though. Do we pay sales tax on what we sell as a city? Do we pay the federal government? Thanks, BJ.
We are tax exempt.
Except at our facilities, like when we were doing the War Memorial, we had there was still sales tax on the concessions and all of that stuff. So there's some categories.
But that's not the city buying it. That would be patrons purchasing it. And they would have.
Oh,
to pay
you were
sales
asking if
tax,
we
so-
pay sales tax on what we buy. Was that your, I thought you asked, okay.
No, I'm wondering when we sell, because we buy and sell things like property, whatever it may be, and when we sell it, do we owe anybody anything because of we
Right, you
sold
asked me about
something?
sales and, yeah.
Right.
So is that our last item?
No, we have one last item in the committee of the whole. And that is introductory number 433, appointments, Police Accountability Board.
You all saw that, right? A new PAB member. All right.
Any questions on that?
So if we're done with this, I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a legal matter very quickly.
So moved, Madam President.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. So we gotta see we gotta reduce our audience.